Hello, welcome to the News in 5 for September 2022. I am your host, Peter Martin, president of Gosselin Martin Associates, and the News in 5 is a no-frills look back at the news and healthcare facilities management for September 2022. No fancy glitz here. We still need used paper. Sorry if that offends people. The News in 5 is a brief look, 5 minutes, a little bit more, 3 stories that we cover. 1 is the market, 2 is the organization, and 3 is a career best practice. Let's start with the market. I heard an interesting story last week from a gentleman that I'm hoping to get on the High Reliability podcast. He works in healthcare facilities management, but also in a couple other fields, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing. So he's a consultant, and he was telling me he was working with an organization. And I think this encapsulates the market today. He was working with an organization, and they were telling him that they were interviewing for, I think it was a senior project manager. And the senior project manager got pretty far in the process. It conducted all the interviews, passed, was at the final stages of the interview, and was offered the job. It was a face-to-face. Was offered the job. They were telling him the salary, the bonus, the frills, all the benefits. And there was no response from the candidate. And so finally, the person who was offering him the role said, "Do you have any feedback, any comments?" And the gentleman said to him, "You know, I was just going through this process because I wanted to see if you would offer me more than my current employer." He had no desire to take the job. And, that's a little bit of an extreme example maybe, but more and more there's a lot of job searching going on out there. I've said this on our podcast. I've said this in News in 5. The market is just very different from what it once was. You talk about any form of ethics or morals completely absent in that. And so that's the market today. Unfortunately, you're getting those people who are comparing salaries. And we've talked about loyalty before. I don't know that people perceive their organizations are loyal to them or they're loyal to their organization. So it's just, it's a different time. One other thing I would say about the market, and the organizations we work with, I say this a lot. If I could create candidates, like if there was a manufacturing plant to create candidates, then I would do it and you would do it and everybody would do it. But we don't have that. And so organizations have to be realistic for what they're looking for in the traits of their employees that they're hiring, because length of experience, length of stay at organizations isn't what it once was. And with the retirements, we're doing a survey that I hope you've taken. It's a facility management survey, and you can find it on our website, gosselin-associates.com. In the blog section, there's a link to it. It concludes next week, but I was looking at the responses yesterday, and the responses have been really good. Somewhere 75% of the respondents, 70% of the respondents have been in healthcare facilities management for 21 to 25 years. We are an aging demographic, and people are leaving. And so, creating candidates, that perfect candidate, which leads us into, the next section, it's really hard to do, and people are leaving. We're not finding them. If you do want a job, you can go on our website. You can look at the jobs we are currently recruiting for. Director of Planning, Design, Construction in Cleveland, a vice president here in Massachusetts, a director in New Jersey, and an executive director out in California. Topic 2, the organization. As I said, I think organizations need to be realistic of what the market is these days, what it is and what it isn't. And I think if you're seeking the perfect candidate, you're going to keep looking because it's just not there. And as we talk about the perfect candidate, none of us are perfect candidates. I find that we do a lot of career counseling through our career hub. And if we're truthful with ourselves, we have all had a negative employee experience. I don't care who you are, you have. And I talk to candidates a lot about, okay, how do I handle that during an interview? And when you talk to the candidate, you find that there's often a reason behind what happened. It might be something that was going on with them personally at the time, familial at the time. And through talking to people, you realize that we're all imperfect. And I think sometimes organizations look at resumes or they see short stays or they hear employees and automatically they just say, okay, we're not going to look at you. I don't like that you were only there a year and that this happened. And listen, I think that we have to, especially going forward, as there are fewer people in the market, we need to talk to candidates and find out the why behind it. Because as I talk to people, I often find the why is something that isn't as extreme as you may think it is. And so organizations, I think they're seeking perfect candidates. We've all had that bad experience. We need to show a little mercy at times, I think, and we need to show a little mercy in a shrinking employee market. If we were in an employee market where you could pick and choose, well, that's fine. But that doesn't make sense. That doesn't exist. The other thing I talk to organizations about is you look at a resume, and I try to figure these things out when people apply to the jobs that we have. If I don't know who they are, I always look at the resume and I try to say, well, does this career journey make sense? Does what they did, can I see what they're trying to accomplish? And I think looking at a career journey and saying, does what the candidate has done make sense is really important. It's more than just looking at the jobs and what they've done. It's trying to piece together if there is a rhyme and a reason to what they're doing. The last thing I would say about organizations, and I deal with this quite a bit, and I don't know what to tell you, organizations will say, well, this person's only been with their organization 3 or 4 years. Why are they leaving? 2 years. Why are they leaving? That's the new reality. I mean, the 10-year employee, and I've said this a number of times, they're not existing like they once did. And so, there's there's kind of a new paradigm within the length of stay. I talked about loyalty as we talked about the market. I think as employees perceive less loyalty on the part of organizations, well, they're more apt to jump or to move around. And there's a lot of movement. Again, I wish I could solve for that, but I can't. But that's what the market is. So I think organizations really need to see the new market and adjust, because it's not 10 years ago. Which goes to our final topic. Excuse me. Wow, I told you we were no frills. It's early in the morning, so I just took a sip of coffee. Career best practice. Let's talk about interviews. And I think that, as I talk again about career counseling, interview advice, I enjoy giving as folks, go in and say, and I guess if there was 2 keys or 3 keys that I always tell people, the first is silence, right? Silence. Silence is uncomfortable, but in an interview, you need to be comfortable with silence, because a skilled interviewer will try to get you to talk. The more you talk, the more they learn about you. So I say, answer the question fully, and stop talking and be comfortable with the silence. And that would be the first key, but really very important with that, not only silence, but when you go into an interview, prepare yourself. You should have 2 to 3 stories of specific accomplishment in mind that you've done in your career that you are going to use during that interview. Now, those stories need to fit the questions, and sometimes you may need to find a creative way to work it in, but probably not. You should be able to based off the questions, but have specific quantifiable stories that you are going to tell about your professional achievement, not personal. Those stories should match to what that employer is looking for. Every job has a job profile. Look at that job profile, see what they're looking for, and develop 2 or 3 stories from your career that fit what they're looking for. I find that a lot. Excuse me. I find it on resumes, find it when I'm talking to people. They just don't prepare with those specific stories of accomplishment that they want. The other third, I say give 3, is just know why you want the job. Know why you want the job. If they ask you, why are you interested in this job? You have to have a reason. And it can't be about the money, and it kind of needs to be thoughtful. People have been disqualified because they haven't answered that question well. And knowing why you want the job means you probably got to do a little research into the organization, who they are, what they stand for. While a shorter commute may certainly be viable, I don't know that it's the answer that organizations are looking for. You have to sell your candidacy to them. Why do you want to work for us? Not because I am closer to you than your current job. Well, again, that might be true, and a lot of people are motivated by that. Has to be something about the organization that you're looking for. The only other thing for a job interview is know what your weaknesses are, know what your weakness is on your resume, and prepare for that question. So interviews, as I've said this 1,000 times, and we talk about this in our classes and through our Career Hub, but you can have two people at an interview, or you have two people, sometimes 3 or 4 at the same interview, and you can get a completely different story for what went on. So interviews are difficult, they're stressful. I think if you go in prepared with 3 things, being comfortable with silence, 2 or 3 stories of specific quantifiable achievement, knowing why you want the job and preparing, you're putting yourself in a position of success. And of course, you as a candidate looking for a job should be assessing the organization just as the organization is assessing you. As I said, you can find more information on our Career Hub on our website. This has been the news in 5 for September. I'd say one last thing. We released a podcast late in September with Shay Rancorn. Shay is the president of ASHI. Shay is also a vice president for 21 Hospital System in Tennessee. It's a really good podcast. I would encourage you to listen to it. It's released now, and it's a good discussion with Shay. Good man. I'm Peter Martin from Gosselin Martin Associates. This has been the news in 5 for September 2022. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next month.